FM Scout guys, hello, hope you're well. My name's Fox. I am going to be coming onto this channel to do a little bit of content over the FM21 cycle. What we have for you today though is a video that is from my current channel, which is Fox in the Box FM. Links are down in the description. So I have put it up on there and I'm going to move it across to here as well to give you kind of an introductory to the content that I do. So this is somewhat of a re-upload, so some of you may have seen it already. Don't be mad. I'm just sharing some information that I feel is very relevant to Scout as much as it is to my channel. And this is the type of thing we're going to be bringing over to here. So no, you won't see uploads on mine and on there of the same thing. This is just literally a one-off. So hopefully you enjoy this video and we'll catch you all very soon. Bring on FM21. While mulling over the next video, I was trying to think of something a little bit more kind of educational. Something that I could share with the Football Manager community that maybe isn't well known at this moment in time. Something that's gone missed. Something we all want and all think should be in Football Manager, but then maybe it is. And then it ticked. A highly requested one from a lot of different people is late developers. There are so many examples of football players who come to prominence later in their careers, Jamie Vardy being one of the most obvious ones. Why can we have wonder kids that grow to be the best players in the world, but why can't we have wonder kids that maybe didn't make it, or players that were never touted as wonder kids who then later in their career develop some kind of pathway to become one of those upper echelon players? Why isn't that a thing? Well, it actually is. I've done a little bit of research, I found out as much as I can find out about it, and I'm going to let you guys know. Late developers in Football Manager are actually a thing, and it's down to a little unknown thing called progression factors. So before we do begin this little escapade into the world of the smaller things of Football Manager, the nooks and crannies, the things that can be taken in many different ways, I'm gonna say this. A player's progression, development, growth can depend on a number of factors, and whether they reach their potential ability can be based on facilities, morale, personality, injury. In short, before you jump into the comment section and start giving lots of different what ifs and buts, everybody knows this game does not come with a manual for the obvious reason that there are so many different caveats to certain parts of it. It's what makes the game really unique. So let's not go off on all these different pathways, let's keep it on one easy straight line. So we'll begin today's video here with Andrew James's comment, which is on the screen right now. He works for Sports Interactive, and on November the 28th 2019 posted this in response to player development. Players have a hidden score called progression factor that dictates how close their current ability can get to their full potential ability. Now before we go further forward in this comment here, I want to let everybody know the basics of the build of a Football Manager player in the background. I think it's only fair to assume at this point that not everybody will understand how PA and CA work. So here it is in its very simplest form. PA, or known as potential ability, is the maximum a player can reach. So let's say a player's potential ability is 100, their current ability cannot be 101. It can be 99 or below. How a player reaches their potential ability, as mentioned earlier, comes to a lot of different factors. Factors today that we're just simply not going to cover, but it's definitely not as easy as going from A to B. Back to Andrew's comment. A player's PF, or progression factor, is calculated based on a variety of different things, including age and performance. Young players are much more likely to get a higher progression factor, and it can be recalculated during a save at key points of a player's career. So taking that wording there from what Andrew had wrote, I went away and did a little bit more digging. I wanted to understand how progression factor works. Is there a scale to it? Is there a higher progression factor and a lower progression factor? After throwing a few questions backwards and forwards and asking people who I would think are in the know, I found out that progression factors fall between 1 and 5. 5 being a very fast progression, 1 being the slowest. So what does that mean? Well, if a player's current ability is 50 and his potential ability is 100, he has potential of 50 points to grow from the 50 mark to reach the 100. If his progression factor is 1, he will progress from 50 to 100 at a much slower rate. This is assuming he makes the 100 potential ability. As already said, there's many other factors that go into that. If this player has a progression of 3, he will go from 50 to 100 quicker than the progression factor of 1. And should a player have the progression factor of 5, he will go from 50 to 100 a lot quicker. But what realistically does this mean? Now, we've all seen wonder kids at a very young age burst onto the scene and then never really progress and make it higher up the footballing ladder. They kind of blow up and then fizzle out before the age of 21. There's potential that in Football Manager terms, these young wonder kids had a high progression factor. They reached their potential ability really early. They hit the ceiling, they couldn't go any higher. Where there are other players in the game that come into the footballing scene and don't really make an impact. But because they have a 1 progression factor, there's a slow improvement. Eventually, they start blossoming at 23, 24. We've seen examples of both of that in real life, and there are examples of that in Football Manager. Everyone has had a young wonder kid come into their save, progress really fastly, and blow up to be the next superstar. But finding those players who don't quite make it early but come to prominence later in their careers is a lot harder. So I went back into one of my old saves and tried to find a player who had a progression factor of 1, the slowest progression to their potential ability. There was a player in my Inter Berlin save called Almin Bilal. We brought him as a youngster around 18 years old, and then we moved him on at the age of 19 to 20. But after letting him go to Mönchengladbach, he then moved on to Paris Saint-Germain. I wanted to know a little deeper about his progression of his attributes in a particular position, so I did this matrix. This shows Almin's progress from a 19-year-old through to a 31. Though Almin made his biggest gains over the age of 19, he continued to make progression at 20, 21, 22 and 23, with 23 being his biggest growth year. Now, to help you understand what you are looking at just a little bit more, you can see on the left hand side it says the year which we were in at the point of when I've taken that player. So for instance, the top one is September 2026 at the age of 18. The total being all the attributes added together and the growth being how many he gained the following year. So for an 18-year-old, he was 212 total. As a 19-year-old, he was 227. Obviously, it must be noted at this point there are many other attributes that we haven't factored into this that some of his growth potential may have gone into. To understand the colour scheme a little bit more, the green means he made a gain in that attribute, the red means he lost, and the yellow means he remained the same from year to year. So for instance, as an 18-year-old, he had 14 determination, and he continued to have 14 determination up until 21 when he went to 15. However, at 22, he did go back down to 14. Now, what I found within Almin and doing a little bit more digging was not a progression factor 1 player. A player that progresses at a slower rate but becomes better as he gets older. What I did find, however, was probably a player with a progression factor of 2 to 3. This means he wasn't the quickest of 5, but he wasn't the slowest of 1. However, Almin was somewhat of a late developer. As mentioned earlier, finding these examples is really hard. I've gone through several examples over this Inter Berlin 20-year save, and this is the best one I could find. But moving back to Andrew James's comment on the official SI forums, it does confirm that late developers are in Football Manager. How many there are or how obvious they are, we don't know. I would suggest by the fact that lots of people are asking why late developers aren't involved in Football Manager suggests that they're not very obvious. And maybe simply put, this is an area that Football Manager can work on to create a narrative and a storyline behind these late developers. But there's one thing we've got to remember: the progression factor is recalculated at points during a player's career. That means a player with 5 progression, which is the fastest, could have theirs recalculated to middle or lower, being 1 where he doesn't progress as fast. Alternatively, it can go the other way and you can have a slow grower to begin with who then blossoms very quickly later in their career. I found it interesting when doing research on this topic that there's not much readily available on the internet. It's something that players have asked for such a long time, but has never been brought outside of the forums. There will be certainly players of Football Manager who know about this, and kudos to those guys. But on the whole, a lot of people thought late developers weren't a thing in Football Manager. But based on this comment, they are. So maybe this will change how you deal with players in the future. Maybe it won't. But it's pretty cool to find out that late developers are, in actual fact, in Football Manager. But I hope you've enjoyed today's video, something a little bit different. We haven't done any educational type stuff on here for quite a while, but I felt this to be quite important, especially as it was quite recently in my FM21 wish list. There we go, guys. late developers are in Football Manager. Who knew it? But if you are new around here, of course, and you could tickle that thumbs up button and that subscribe button, that would be ace. We're trying to push through to 15,000 before the start of FM21 if possible. We are on our way there, and if you could help us, that would be awesome. Until next time though, guys, you've been awesome, and I'll catch you in the next one.